Merry Christmas Eve, my beautiful mama. We are here the day before Christmas on Fun Rich Mom. I'm Mitch Blackford, and I am so excited to be here with you today. And I have a question for you. This one's going to throw you for a little loop. You ready? Okay. What do Santa Claus, Dr. Stuart Ablon, the show This Is Us, and Jesus Christ have in common? Saying Doctor Who and This Is Us. My husband and I just started watching it this last summer. We're a little behind, but we're catching up. So the answer is what we're going to get in today, and that is what life would look like if you met people where they're at. So with that, let's get started. So what do I mean by this meet people where they're at? Okay, so you're at your house, I'll go meet you there, or I'm at my house, I'll go meet you there. Well, it has nothing to do with physical location, and I'm sure you might have caught on to that, but I'm going to take it back a little bit to the fact that we're in the Christmas season, right? The first part of the question. What does Christmas have to do with this? Well, throughout the year, maybe you use it throughout the year, at least throughout December, when all the Christmas decorations go up, the Christmas music is playing. What do we start doing with our kids? Oh, you better watch out. You better not pout. Santa Claus is making two lists. You're either on the naughty or the nice one. Maybe you even have the elf on the shelf and it's going around the house and it's telling your kids, spying on them for Santa. Like, I've seen you be naughty, although it's doing all sorts of crazy naughty things. Not necessarily the best example, but hey, it's fun, right? I guess we do what we do. But this whole message about you got to be nice or you're being naughty. And I know that sometimes as a parent, we can wonder when our kids are fighting, when they're giving us attitude, when just things seem to be going wrong. You're like, why does my kid constantly need to fight me or battle me? Or why don't they understand? Or why do they do these things? I've told them a million times that's not okay. Why are they so bad? And then, of course, there's the moments when they're wonderful, sweet angels. And that's when you take the pictures of them because they're asleep. Now, there's other times too as well. But here is the thing about Christmas. Like I said, it's promoting this naughty or nice culture. You're either one or you're the other. And this is where Dr. Stuart Ablon comes in. Now, he has been working with kids and parents and doing research for years and years and years. And I came across him on an interview on the Mel Robbins podcast, which, by the way, if you've never heard that, check it out. It's phenomenal. I think she's like the number one podcast in the world, maybe. But he was talking about the fact that kids never actually set out to do or be bad. And the question he posed was, what if you realize that your kid is actually just doing the best that they can? And you can even extend that and play that further out in life. Your teen is just doing the best that they can. Your husband doing the best that they can. Your parents doing the best that they can. And oh yeah, that includes you. You're doing the best that you can with the tools that you have, the resources that you have, with the energy that whatever is going on around you. It's not like any of us actually ever get up and wake up in the morning. We're just like, how can I be bad? Who can I just piss off today? Your kids don't wake up thinking like, how can I take mom and dad down? Okay, maybe every now and then they have some fun and do that. But ultimately, if you think about it, everybody just wants to be recognized and felt appreciated and known that they're trying their hardest, that they're good. And not all of us are at the same milestones, including adults. And I know it's easy to look back at kids and say, oh yeah, they haven't reached the milestone of walking, or now they've reached that milestone, now they're talking, or they've reached the milestone of understanding that things aren't just black and white, there's shades of gray, the logic, and there's different little milestones along the way. And at the same time, it's so easy to forget that there's these milestones, that they grow and understand them at different rates. And that even when there's a basic understanding, there's so many nuances in life that sometimes they just don't get it. And I know that I have been guilty of this a lot. There have been so many times that I've just thrown on this understanding to my kids, or at least this feeling of they should be understanding and being at where I expect them to be, because I'm already there and I've talked to them about it once. So they should just know. And then I wonder, like, why are they not getting it? Or why are they driving me nuts? Or why have they gone back into this cycle of fighting that we thought we were over? The point is, they're doing the best that they can with what they know how, with where their emotional resources are, with what they've been taught. And sometimes they just don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle the situation that they're in. And so they just do something. And it doesn't always work out in our favor, which usually doesn't end up working out in their favor. But it's not that they set out to be like bad. They didn't climb to the top of the cupboards thinking, ooh, mom's going to get really mad at me and I'm going to be bad. No, they climbed up there because, wow, it looked like a challenge. And I'm a kid and I want to try and test everything out because I need to figure out what this body does and what this world is and what it means. And okay, so they were 18 years old and, just kidding. But even in those teenage years, I don't know if you remember, but those hormones were raging and there were it's just plain stupid. At least my head had a lot of stupid going on. I know it might be a harsh word, but that's just where I was at. There was a lot of stuff that I did right. But when it came down to it, if I think of some of the things, like some of the thoughts that I had or some of the things that I thought were okay to do, and I just look back, I'm like, what was I thinking? And I'm like, oh, it was my hormones thinking for me, not necessarily my brain. And so at that time, I was doing the best that I could. Never set out to be bad, but that's what I could handle. And those were the things that I ended up doing, right? Whatever it was, because that's where I was, even as an adult. And this is going to get me into the this is us part of the equation. Okay, so a little spoiler alert if you haven't jumped on the This Is Us bandwagon. This is like season 5, but okay, I'm going to give you like 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I lied. 5 seconds to switch. There is this part where Kevin, one of the triplets, is together with this girl that is now pregnant, and they're planning on getting married. And he was talking to, I don't know, maybe his sister or his mom, someone. Anyway, and he said, it's kind of in a weird way. I feel like I've met my match. And what's interesting is they had known each other for a few years. She happened to be his sister's best friend. And when he first met her, he's like, don't let me sleep with her. She's crazy. That's, I always end up with the insane girls. And she kind of was at that time. And then some years had passed by and some experiences have happened. And they still had some getting to know each other to do, but now they were different people at the table, right? And so this is where, like I said, we bring in this part is sometimes in our journey, we're not at the same space as someone else or where they want us to be, or they're not where we want them to be. And we have this tendency, at least I know I have this tendency in the past. I've worked really hard to try not to do this. And sometimes I still catch myself doing this, but there's this tendency to just think everyone is exactly where we are. They know everything that we know. They've gone through the same emotional stuff or whatnot. And so we just treat them like, well, why aren't you doing it this way? Why don't you think this way? I don't understand why this is a problem. Why are you, X, Y, and Z? Well, it's because they haven't had our journey. It's because they haven't emotionally grown in the same way that we have. They've emotionally grown in a different way. It's because their logic has been tested differently. It's because they've had experiences that have left different marks on their soul than the ones that are on ours, and they haven't lined up and matched yet. And so that's the same thing as well in our kids. It's with our spouses. Oh my gosh. I know you know this one where you've talked to your husband and you're like, I just don't understand how you don't get this, and there's a lot more going on to it, but they grew up with a whole different story than we did. So we've got these two stories and we're trying to shove them together as if we listened to the same narrator, had the same plot twists. And why don't you get where I'm coming from? Well, because I didn't come from where you came from. Now we're together and we're weaving our stories together. And so we're getting there. But sometimes one of us is not in fact, most of the times, we're just not in the same place as the other person. But that doesn't mean that at some point in time, as we're weaving those stories together, we can't get there in certain parts. Like we've met up with each other now. Instead of trying to force you into thinking and feeling and being the way that I am, I have finally come to a place, and you have come to a place where we're in rhythm with each other. We both kind of have this same path at this point where we can understand and embrace and go on together. And I loved that part where I was just looking at, oh, how interesting that story and that This Is Us, that they couldn't have gotten together when they first met. It wouldn't have been right. You wouldn't have been cheering for them, right? Because they weren't in the parts of their journey where it made sense yet. They still had some more growing to do. They still had some more experiences they had to go through and some fire that they had to, weather in order to get to the place where now when you see them together, you're rooting for them. It's like, oh, now they make sense. Now they seem more like this is a good storyline for them to be blending. And that's the same thing in our lives. Sometimes we just haven't gotten to the point where it makes sense for something or someone to connect with us. And sometimes that happens even with our kids. And I'm not saying this means that you're disconnected from your child. It just means pay attention to realizing where are they at? And we need to stop trying to force them to be at the place we expect them, want them to be. They have a whole world that they've been going through and growing through as well that has formed these opinions and experiences for them that is different than ours. Even though we've been there through that journey with them, they still think and feel and process in a different way than we have had that same journey, right? Because we're coming from a parent point of view. They're coming from this whole world is new to me point of view. Even as teens, this world is still new. You're 14 years old. You haven't done a lot of living. There's still a lot of life that you haven't learned the nuances to. And so when we can start to appreciate that, and then the next step is, hey, you know what? What is your opinion? What are your thoughts? What are your worries? What is something that you need to voice that maybe I haven't been listening to? And it just suddenly opens up a world where, cow, you guys can communicate in a different way. And now you understand, going back to naughty and nice, they haven't been naughty. It's not that they're not nice. It's just they've been doing the best they can, Dr. Stuart Ablon, through all of these years with their understanding. And now their journeys have come together. And here we go. We come back to Jesus Christ, where we round out the whole reason for the season. And this is one where sometimes it takes a little hit, but at the same time, it's so true. Ain't nobody blameless in this life. I'll go to the story of when there was a woman who was committing adultery with a man. And at the time, the woman was taken to the town square, and we had a bunch of the elder priests and Pharisees wanting to stone her, but it was also kind of an entrapment for Jesus because they wanted to set him up to see what he would do. And he's like, she's an adulterer. According to our law, we can stone her. And what did he say? Love this if you've never heard it. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And guess what happened? Slowly, one by one, they all walked away because each of them knew, well, darn, that's not me. And I wrap that together with this because sometimes I know that there have been times where I go through a situation and in my mind, I am right. I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone else around me is not getting it or isn't understanding or whatnot. And when I can step back and remember, wait a second, I am not blameless here because obviously I am a part of what's going on. Maybe, different levels of whatever's going on, but I am just as involved in this situation too. And if I didn't step up earlier to maybe help someone out when I saw, hey, they could use some help, or have the conversation when it started bothering me instead of letting it wait and fester, then guess what? I'm just as much to blame for whatever happened in that situation as anyone else is, because I didn't take the actions that I knew I could. I set everyone else up around me to fail for me. That hurts. And sometimes we do that with our kids. We do that with our spouses. We do that with our parents. We do it with our friends. I mean, we do it with ourselves too. How many times have you just kicked yourself in the booty because you let something go on and you didn't step up for yourself when you knew you should have? But guess what? At that moment, you were doing the best that you could. And now you've gone through some of that fire and it's gotten you to a different place where now, guess what? You can meet yourself a little higher and start to change that story and make a difference in your life. This leads me to the last thing that I didn't bring up, but this was also on the show with Mel Robbins about a football player who had done an interview. And I'm so sorry, I don't remember, but basically he said his interest in life was to break generational curses. Every time he looked at his children, it was about how can I be different? And I loved this. It was so beautiful. And it wraps all of this stuff together about what if everyone is just trying their best, and what if we met people where they're at instead of trying to force them to be where we want them and expect them to be. What if the first thing your kid did in the morning wasn't to hear you yell, "You're late, get up. Oh my gosh, you're missing the bus. You're making us late. You didn't eat breakfast. Go make your bed. Go put your clothes. Where's your school books?" What if the first thing that your kid heard when they got up was, "Hey, it's great to see you this morning. Let's have an awesome day. How can we help each other get ready on time?" What do you think that would do? How would that change the whole dynamic of the day? Instead of being mad at them because they overslept. Because guess what? Kids oversleep. Adults, we oversleep. It's just part of what we do. But what if we set them up for success instead and we rewarded them? What happens to you when someone is just so cool to you and they meet you where you're at and you feel understood by them? What do? You do everything you can to continue to meet or exceed that person's expectations because you want to be your best around them. When you are surrounded by a person who just brings their best to the game, it automatically up levels you. It automatically creates that desire to be like, how can I step up as well? What if we were that for our children? What if we were that for our spouse? What if we were that for our friends? Can you imagine how the dynamic of your life would change? What if we were that for ourselves? Just think about right now. What's one thing in your life where you could be your best cheerleader? How would that change? If you wanted to step up and be that person, how would that change? Think about your kid. What's the thing right now that has been just that thorn in your side between you and your kid sometimes? What if you were able to switch that dynamic around and realize they're just doing the best that they can? Meet them where they're at. And why don't I go ahead and break that tradition of getting mad like moms tend to do? And I flipped it around. Doesn't mean that I give them permission to do whatever they want, whenever they want, run willy-nilly. It doesn't mean that I don't have discipline for them and that there's not structure. But what if I changed the way that I react to them? That was a question that I did when my kids were very young. If you've ever heard the first episode where I had my momster moment, that was one of the questions that I had for myself. What if instead of blowing up, because really in the end, I'm just pissed off at myself and about the situation that I'm in, and I felt a little bit powerless and out of control. I had a little 1 and 2-year-old that weren't acting the way I wanted them to. And so I monster raged. I let it all loose on them. And what if I continued that pattern in their life instead of at that moment having the realization of, oh my gosh, if I do this to them for the rest of their lives, what sort of relationship are they going to have? What are they going to think of me? And what are they going to think of motherhood, of relationships, of who they need to grow up to be? What if instead, when I feel that monster rage and I recognize it, I step back and I take care of me really quick. I take care of that situation inside, or I can place it to a moment when I know I have time, but I don't put it on my kids. Then what happens? And that's the relationship I've been working on with my babies for the last 4 years. And it's been amazing. It's awesome. And of course, there's still moments of frustration. And there's still moments where, do I act the best? No. But I haven't had a monster moment like I did in the past. And that is so beautiful. Because I know I don't have to be that person anymore. And I know that my kids never have to experience that from me. And they don't have to wonder, gee, mom, how come you got a Christmas present? Because you're not always nice either. So those 4 things have just really been flashing some lights at me. And like I said, it's just been something where I felt really compelled to share about. And especially with this time of year, this is the season of giving, right? So how about we give our best so that we can also help people become their best around us? How about we give our best to our spouses so that they can give their best back to us? How about we go and we forgive a parent because they were doing the best that they could? And what if we give them our best so that they can, in return, give their best back to us? Now, wouldn't that be a Christmas worth remembering? Thank you so much for being here with me today. Want to tell you, you mean so much to me, and I believe 100% that you are capable of being whatever it is that you are dreaming of. that person inside of you that sometimes might feel like they're locked and trapped, they are right there. They are right there. All you got to do is let them out. And it's a lot easier than you think. There's no complicated answers. There's no burying them out. It's just making one choice at a time. And you'll see if you continue to do that, the results are absolutely outstanding. So, with that, I wish you a Merry Christmas. Go out there, make it fun, make it rich, oh so rich. And I will talk to you next week. Bye bye.